A reminder that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Caribbean, ICAC, has been in existence since 1988. They are committed to bringing us together as a profession. Today, the ICAC is a network of over 4,000 strong, as also consisting of member institutes and associate members and affiliate members. The current executive is led by President David Simpson, who will now deliver the official opening remarks. Mr. Simpson.
Past presidents of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Caribbean, ICAC, directors, alternates, and affiliates of the ICAC, presidents, directors, and executives of our various member institutes, sponsors, speakers, and panelists, members of the accounting profession from across the region, and delegates and media. A warm good morning to each of you as we get this conference 2022 officially on the way. Time and time again, we have been told, never waste a good crisis. As we prepare to embark upon 2 days of virtual learning and sharing during our 39th annual conference and our second using a virtual platform, we are in a way honoring this year's conference theme, Global Disruptions, Regional Resiliency. Despite the ongoing pandemic, the challenges of travel, a war, and the rising cost of goods and services, as evidenced in that last video clip, and as a result of these and other disruptions, here we are together once again for the 39th time in the month of June. We have continued to persevere and adapt as an institute and as a people. Through this conference, we wish to acknowledge our collective unbroken spirits as a region and as a profession, for as we stand holding our own individually and collectively, growth has occurred. It often takes extreme circumstances to bring about the necessary change, and over the past 2.5 years, probably more than ever before, we have proved our resiliency in unmeasured ways. To survive economically, many have taken the opportunity to diversify businesses, economies, and life models, acknowledging that reliance on our tourism sector, fixed workspaces, and non-traditional approaches to work and life are no longer viable, because of the many factors that have been, are, and will continue to be beyond our control. For some of us, I am sure we have at some point in recent months actually questioned our abilities at risk management and analysis. We have witnessed strengthening ties between Guyana and Barbados and the region in terms of energy and agriculture. We have seen Trinidad and Tobago express a clear desire to work collectively to ensure better food security for our region. We are looking at new and emerging markets in the interest of trade and foreign direct investments, turning our attention to the African continent and even South America. The pandemic has reinforced that no man is an island and that we cannot create true wealth by selling or trading to ourselves. Our markets are inherently too small. During the conference, we offer you inspiration on the realization of global growth in the face of a pandemic through the Sasha Cosmetics story as shared with us by its founder. All leaders, and I must put a plug here, but I will say driven by our own Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley in Barbados, have boldly called and lobbied for climate action on global platforms, reminding the world of the impacts upon small island developing states that have been susceptible to climate forces for as long as we have existed. There are only 8 years left until 2030, the globally agreed upon deadline to significantly reduce carbon emissions, and this must be a critical goal for Caribbean countries, economies, businesses, and its citizens and residents, all of which are very vulnerable to the effects of climate change. What's your contribution to this drive, I asked this morning. And during the course of our conference, our platinum sponsor, EY, through its presentation, will seek to make us more aware and accountable in that regard. Additionally, with each passing day, we are inundated with new concepts, policies, technological advances, and we must now navigate words like metaverse, NFTs, DeFi, the green, orange, and blue economies, and let us not forget ESG and even the term resilience that resides even in our conference theme this year. Over the next 2 days, we hope to demystify many of these while guiding you on a path to personal and corporate resilience, economic and social resilience, culinary, food, and even cultural resilience, among others. But what about the impacts of all the disruption and attempts at achieving resilience on our profession and the very role of the accountant as we know it? What about the new generation of accountants, those entering the profession during this time of turbulence? What's the ask of them and the more seasoned of our members? We'll hear directly from some of our younger professionals later today, but I will take this opportunity to clearly state that the ICAC, as agreed and discussed at its Board of Directors meeting held yesterday, is indeed committed to the future of our profession. We are committed to realizing goals of freedom of movement, practicing rights across borders, and improving quality assurance mechanisms as we support the creation of truly global citizens. I also encourage our various member institutes to host even more structured mentorship and internship programs for our young members, because unprecedented support is what is needed during these very unprecedented times. And such support, I propose to you this morning, cannot dwell in a place of fear, protectionism, or antiquated approaches. Collectively, we must, with brutal honesty and a measure of vulnerability, face it and fix it, to borrow a phrase from former Prime Minister Owen Arthur. Over the years, we have closely held to our value proposition of being trusted advisors. I submit that now more than ever, we owe it to our clients to provide that guidance and navigation using new and innovative ways. I encourage each of us to keep abreast of those global impacts within your local environment as well, within your communities, within your workplaces, to keep up with your CPD hours. And as a part of ICAC's commitment to this development, we have sought to bring you varying perspectives through the topics on our agenda for this year's conference. In 2022, the accountant is being called upon to be a strategist, to identify and manage risks, many of which seem so difficult to predict and manage, to weigh the options that come with diversification or downsizing, and to bring added value to the table well beyond the traditional definition of who we are and what we do. This is how we build resilience in this profession and across our client bases, and even extending to our wider economies and societies. So how do we keep up and keep sane in the midst of all of this disruption? We need to personally audit ourselves and our roles. Many of us have been touched directly or indirectly by the COVID-19 pandemic. And for those of you who have experienced loss during the past year, I express sincere condolences on behalf of the Institute and its members. But it brings to the forefront the importance of self-care and the management of our physical, mental, and spiritual spaces, whatever that means for you. We must lose the stigma attached to self-care, healthy living, counseling, life coaching, meditation, and other elements that our bodies and minds may be calling and asking for. During the height of isolation, we became reliant on others, a reminder that we need each other in order to grow stronger. Similarly, as we learn to live with the lingering effects of having been infected with COVID, or the lingering effects of COVID on our workplaces, on our societies and communities, we too must learn to live with the effects of our internal disruptors and have a stronger voice as leaders, as managers, as thought leaders in our workspace and in our communities. That stance and the acceptance of the heightened role we are now called upon to play aid in the collective recovery effort for our region. I would usually speak to work-life balance, but more and more the lines between the two are merging, as is the case with our personal and professional brands. However, I strongly urge you to create and maintain clear boundaries between work and home life, though both are generally occurring in the same space for many of us still. Remote work is about flexibility, balance, and productivity, not about stress, overwork, and fatigue. As employers, I encourage you, let us remember the needs of our people who make our companies what they are as we create this new work normal. The future of the profession demands something far greater than we have demanded during our time. Let us, in the words of the late, great Robert Nesta Marley, commonly known to us as Bob Marley, remember that it is therefore more important that we don't forget who we are and where we stand in the struggle on a daily basis. On this note, let's march forward as a united body, as a united profession, as a united people, and as one Caribbean as we forge the way ahead despite global disruptions, creating regional and ultimately global resilience and solutions. It is my distinct pleasure, therefore, to welcome you to Conference 2022. As I close, let me acknowledge each of you as the delegates attending today and tomorrow, I am well aware that our registration processes were significantly disrupted due to technical difficulties, but once again, as our theme speaks to, resilience and the pursuit of alternative solutions and a good dose of patience have seen us through. We look forward to our return to full in-person annual conferences by 2024, and I will share more on this during my conference wrap-up tomorrow afternoon. Please enjoy the conference package that has been prepared for you, and my sincere thanks to you for your presence, your ongoing interest in the events of the ICAC on an annual basis, and for your keen attention this morning. Thanks, and have a great day all.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was ICAC President David Simpson. And of course, we have a very hands-on president. He would have touched on potential challenges that either you or some of your colleagues may have been experiencing in either the registration process or the logging on process this morning. We appreciate that for some, this is a new platform. And should there be a need for guidance, should there be a need for assistance with registration still, our president has made himself available. His own email address, president@icacorg.com. That's president@icacorg.com. Thank you very much, President David Simpson, for stepping in, as always, as needed. This conference is, of course, being broadcast through the Wova platform, but we have also been active on our social media platforms, and I encourage you to follow, join the ICAC LinkedIn page. Most importantly, that's where our updates have been posted. If you are sharing coverage, if you are telling others, I am attending the ICAC Conference 2022 this year, please hashtag ICAC 2022 and or hashtag Global Disruptions Regional Resilience. Now, throughout the morning, we have heard over and over again the introduction of that term that our, previous generations were very much accustomed to, and that is recession and the concept of recession. We would like to share with you, once again, a very real take on our situation today, not just regionally, but globally, as related to a pending recession.
The fear of recession is mounting in the United States.
Where do you peg the probability of a recession?
Right now, it's, let's say by year end, I'd say about 50-50. It's pretty close.
In June 2022, the World Bank slashed its global growth forecast to 2.9%, warning that several countries could fall into recession.
I think there's a lot of fear just around how it's going to play out, how long it's going to be, and how deep it's going to be.
And it hurts a lot of people. I think the pain tends to be kind of concentrated in the victims of the recession, but none of us can be completely sure that we or our families are not going to be among those victims.
Recessions also often impact the valuation of other asset classes, like the value of your house or the value of your car. And last but not least, it's that really most important one, that increase in the unemployment rate, where people really fear that they could lose a job and thus lose income.
I do believe recessions are really inevitable. I believe that the economic cycle exists.
But some believe that this isn't all bad news.
Some investors, they look at recessions as opportunities. You know, this is an opportunity to buy this asset that's now on sale, and now it's at fair value. I think it's really important to just understand the mechanics, because I think when you do, knowledge is power, information is power, and then you can start to be able to seize the moment.
So why do recessions happen? And are they an inevitable part of the American economy? The National Bureau of Economic Research defines a recession as a significant decline in economic activity that's spread across the economy and lasts more than a few months. It's been synonymous with major economic pain felt by businesses and consumers alike. The Congressional Research Service cites three main causes of a recession. The first is an overheated economy.
When economists talk about the economy overheating, they mean that demand in the economy is growing faster than the ability of the supply side of the economy to satisfy it. And that can be because we just can't produce enough stuff, or it can be because we don't have enough workers.
A hot spike in inflation, alongside a dip in the unemployment rate, could signal that the economy may be overheating. Every recession but one since World War II has seen an inflation hike right before the start of the downturn. And nearly every recession since World War II saw the unemployment rate fall to 5% or lower.
When unemployment gets really low, it means that there's not really very many available workers for firms to hire. And if firms can't find workers to hire, then they have to start bidding up wages. As they start paying people have more income with which to buy goods and services. More income buying goods and services tends to push up the prices of goods and services. So you get a positive feedback between wages moving higher, pushes prices higher, pushes wages higher, pushes prices higher. And if the Federal Reserve didn't intervene by inducing a recession and raising interest rates, that spiral would get stronger and stronger and stronger, and eventually you'd have inflation running away and really getting out of control.
Asset bubbles can be another direct cause. The recession of 2001 was primarily caused by the dot-com bubble burst of 2000, while the Great Recession occurred just after the crash of the housing market.
Asset prices, whether they're stock prices or house prices, go up a lot and they exceed the fundamentals, and then suddenly they come down abruptly. That has a big negative effect on the economy, particularly if people have borrowed to buy those assets.
When that happens, people find out that they're not as wealthy as they thought that they were. And when you find out that you're not as wealthy as you thought that you are, you cut back on your spending. And as you cut back on your spending, that decreases demand in the economy, and it slows the economy down, and enough of it can cause a recession.
And other times, recessions are caused by unpredictable events that lead to severe disruptions. Economists call these events black swans.
These are the things that, unfortunately, we cannot manage. You cannot control geopolitical events. You cannot control, COVID-19. But when they do happen, usually they're fast and furious and have an immediate impact. And that's what drove us into a very quick recession throughout COVID and others that we've seen through the course of time.
The U.S. has experienced at least 30 recessions throughout history, dating back as early as 1857. They may have become an inevitable part of the economic cycle that fluctuates between periods of expansion and contraction.
History teaches us that recessions are inevitable.
I do think recessions are part of our business cycle. Do I believe that they're completely inevitable in a capitalistic society? Partly. There's so many events and external factors that contribute to recessions, such as supply shocks, demand shocks, geopolitical issues that come about.
It's part of human psychology to get too excited about things. And when you get too excited about things, you ultimately have asset bubbles, and those ultimately lead to recessions. It's also part of human nature that people will continue expanding their firms and businesses as long as the economy is good. And as long as that keeps happening, you'll eventually overheat, which eventually will lead to a recession.
Nonetheless, certain measures can be taken to make recessions less likely. As the nation's authority on monetary policies, the Federal Reserve plays a critical role in managing recessions.
With the right monetary policies, the Fed can prevent a recession. It's just very difficult to do so.
There are two things that the Fed can do to avoid a recession. One is to steer the economy so we don't get so much inflation that they have to slam on the brakes. The second is to pay close attention to the financial system so we don't have a repeat like the 2007, 8, and 9 recession, which was caused by too much lending, too many mortgages, and too much careless securitization on the part of Wall Street.
The Fed has often attempted to avoid a recession by engineering what's known as a soft landing. This is where precise interest rate hikes are used to curb inflation without pushing the economy into recession. But a successful soft landing is extremely rare, arguably achieved just once in 1994.
So what they're trying to do is raise rates enough so demand slows. So it's really a tough needle that they're trying to thread to get our economy in equilibrium.
Now, the question is there an amount of pressure that they can apply onto the brakes that's enough to control inflation, but not enough to crash the economy? And the truth is that that's really, really difficult to get into that really, really narrow zone.